All right, folks, it's another lovely day here in Durham, North Carolina. And of course, we've got all kinds of amazing guests and amazing conversations as usual. Actually, today it was a little bit on the sunny side and definitely went out for a little bit of a walk, enjoying that fine weather that was out there. Saw people walking their dogs, saw folks definitely getting out and about. Definitely, society seems to be opening up more and more these days, even though folks are still concerned about this pandemic that we're in the middle of and all of that. And of course, we do know that things are going on even on the political front, because actually on Tuesday, the 2nd, it'll actually be election day. That's right. Tuesday, the 2nd, will actually be election day here. I know that our mayor here in Durham is being elected, but that is actually going to be an already pretty much determined job because, like I said, the two candidates, one of them that was run in the runoff has pretty much dropped out, and actually they withdrew from the race. So that's pretty much a done deal that Elaine O'Neill will be our next mayor. So the first African American woman mayor here in Durham, North Carolina. So I've known her for a while and looking forward to seeing what she's going to do in terms of leadership and all of that. She served as a judge and also served as a professor. Actually, I believe she was the dean of the law school, at least the interim dean over there at North Carolina Central University. So that's going to be great. And then we've got people coming in to the city council and other elective offices as well throughout the state of North Carolina. And I know that there's some in other parts of the country, as well as even some elections going on worldwide and all of that. So a lot of people are paying attention to things like that, and also paying attention to things going on with supplies, and whether we're in the middle of a supply chain shortage that might be adding to some things and things along those lines. But right now, I'm looking forward to a great conversation with a new friend, because we are both working on the Funky Eye Puppet, which is under the direction of the General IPC. And of course, it's always great having those conversations. And when I first learned about Robbi K, I found out that we actually have some commonalities and some common friends and all of that. Because, like I said, she's working on this amazing children's album. And on that children's album is none other than Pierce Freelon and Reese Palmer. So any of y'all know Reese Palmer from the neo country world. And of course, Pierce Freelon is an amazing hip hop artist, but also an educator as well. So that is just two of the folks. But I understand it is people from throughout the world, and they're actually being nominated for a Grammy. And hopefully they will win that Grammy as well. So that is some great and amazing news on that front. So definitely looking forward to hearing from her about that work. And then I was even thinking about some of the other great hip hop artists that are here as well. As a matter of fact, one of them that knows IPC was performing just last night, that being George. And I am always horrible with those some of the foreign last names, but I always call him just George Y and all of that. But yeah, he is definitely a hip hop artist, along with Joshua Gunn and along with others. And they were having a big hip hop festival over this past weekend that was actually to raise money for the HBCUs. And we do know that our HBCUs are definitely needed in the support and all of that. So that's some of the things that was going on. Yours truly could not make it to that event because I was working at the Hayti Heritage Center, which is having another amazing event on that particular day, because we do know that this is the time that a lot of our Latin American brothers and sisters celebrate the ancestors. And they do that with a lot of celebrations that go on around the time of Halloween and all of that. So they had a couple of performers that were going on. They had two Aztec troops, one that I believe was from Sanford, that's Sanford, North Carolina, and another that was from around this the general area, which we call the Triangle. So they were having that event going on, and then there was a capoeira dance performance, as well as the Magic of African Rhythms, which celebrates African music and its roots and all of that. So that was some great things going on, and definitely some enjoyable things, because I know that Robbi K is all about supporting the ancestors as well. So she's all about supporting the ancestors and definitely letting that ancestral voice be heard and all of that. So that's part of what was going on. Because even as I was thinking about Pierce, one of the ancestors that was being honored, because they created a big altar, but they also created a smaller altar that had a lot of famous individuals that have moved on to the ancestral grounds from our local culture. So there was definitely a picture of Baba Chuck Davis there, but there was also a picture of Pierce's dad, Theo Freelon. And of course, he's done some great and amazing work as well. And there were some others that I knew also there in those pictures that were among those ancestors that are keeping watch over us, even though they may not be here in the physical body. We do know that they still are involved in our lives. At least that's kind of my spiritual beliefs and things of that nature. So, Robbi, how are you doing today? How is things going in your part of the world? I mentioned some of the things that you're involved in, like this great children's album, but I just want to know more about Robbi and how you even got involved in the world of culture. Because it seems to me, like myself, that you were almost born into it.
Absolutely, definitely born into it, and always knew that I was a musical being. Was a musical baby, and started to sing and write songs from the age of 3, and kept doing it. Kept doing it. Wound up doing a lot of amazing things. By the time I got in high school, I had a cable TV show. I was a debater, so I was traveling around to different high schools, and I don't think we left the state of New York, but we were traveling all around debating different parts of the state. And somewhere along the way, I did a children's show.
Wow.
I had missed the audition for a play called Henny Penny. And
Mm-hmm.
when I went to the teacher, really kind of annoyed, like, I'm so mad I missed this audition. Blah, 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 blah. And he was like, calm down. You want to do children's theater? I was like, yeah, I think I really want to do that because this adult stuff we try to do in high school sucks. And he said, do it. And I'll be your advisor. I'll sign whatever paper, and you could use my classroom to do any kind of rehearsing and things that you want to do. Put together a company. I don't care. Do it.
Yeah.
So I did. And I put together a company, and I directed and wrote and produced my first children's show in 1980.
Sure.
And we did it in the little community of Patchogue in Medford. And when my older sister saw the production and came to the show, my parents couldn't make it because weekends were when they had off, so they had to do a lot of things when they had days off. And when my sister came to the show, I remember that she just held my face like this, and she said, "This is what you're going to do with your life."
Yeah.
And I looked at her like, I don't think so. But she was so true. And the first school assembly that I did was at my sister's school, where she was a music teacher. She taught music in that school for 38 years.
Cool.
She graduated from that school district. It was a Title I, Brentwood, Long Island. So she was like teaching opera to Black and Latino kids,
Hmm.
and brought me into the school as an assembly. And I was like, what is that? She says, you're going to tell me when you figure it out. I'm going to get you paid. And I was like, you are? She's like, yep, mom would like that. Because you say you want to go into the arts, you don't know what you want to do. This will help you. You can accompany me when I'm teaching voice, and you can be a school assembly program because you're really funny, whatever, whatever. And I believed my big sister. And she was a wonderful singer. She was an amazing teacher. So many of the things that I learned about working with children and students was being in my sister's classroom watching her teach. And she was a very noble teacher, and very passionate about Mozart.
Hmm.
I had no idea that my sister was so passionate about Mozart, um, but she taught me a lot of things as a result of her passions. And when I wound up taking a summer course, a music course, because I needed some additional, courses with my music major at a STEM kind of school, I went to the local community college, and I had a Black professor.
Hmm.
And I was like, you're a music wow, I never met you before. He's like, I know your sister. I was like, you know my sister? And she knew him, and you know how families are, how communities are. Adults know each other. Kids are just
Right.
kids. playing and having fun, going to wherever the
Right.
adults say. So
Yeah,
hmm
that's amazing. An amazing journey. Just in that alone, as you were talking, I was thinking that you probably know, because I know she was very active in the children's theater community there, and actually introduced her to the person that she's been involved with for a number of years. And this was years ago at the National Black Theater Festival. But Aduke Aruma is a friend of mine that's been very much involved in children's theater there in New York. And I'm thinking that y'all circles have probably also come across each other as well, because I've known Aduke for a number of years.
I think I heard of her because she worked with some of the percussionists that I worked with, a
Mhm.
group called Heritage OP, Hassan Bakar, Victor Sion, Kevin Nathaniel. I mean, Kevin went to Harvard. I didn't even realize that he had went to Harvard. He's just always wearing his white and playing his kalimba, and he's brilliant. And I'm thinking like, oh, Kevin, you're so gifted, but he's a Harvard grad. So he was figuring out how to play the music that he plays
Mhm.
when he went to Harvard. I didn't even, wow. So I think that they had told me about Paduke, and our paths never did cross because I chose a different path in terms of marketing,
Right.
and many storytellers were just telling stories.
Mhm.
And as they moved forward, they were moving forward. But I think being married to the husband that I was married to, I
Mhm.
knew about agents and managers and people like that in the business. So I just kind of went in that path kind of pretty early.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You had also mentioned being on the debate club, and I was on the debate club way back when in my high school years and all of that. So this was a long time ago. But I sometimes wonder, and I know that even the people that created this international broadcast media network, which is Nick Palveda and Kimberly Calhoun, along with some of their associates, they oftentimes lament the state of education, because they talk about it being kind of a 21st century values that we're in now, but they feel that we teach 18th century style and things of that nature, even though we're plainly in the 21st century. But I was just wondering, what are some of the lessons that you learned from the debate club that you even bring now? And do you feel that kids in general even know about debate and debate clubs? Because, like I said, I do remember that movie, The Great Debate, I think it was called, or something like that. But you don't even hear about us talking about debates anymore. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are as to how we're doing in terms of teaching people about discourse, conversations, and definitely some of the skills that you learned in a debate club and everything.
Thank you for asking that question. I feel like I'm going to answer it in a kind of not a close up view answer, but like a view from about here.
Right.
So, if we're looking at debate, we can realize that we've been debating as a culture, for example, as African people, Native American people, indigenous people, because we had to learn how to get along in the community.
Right.
So, when you didn't get along in the community, you couldn't yell and scream and punch people. You had to have a discussion. And some people couldn't do discussions well. So, they'd always have like an arbiter or somebody that could kind of like be a person that could balance people.
Right.
Debate is kind of having an intellectual discourse with people.
Mhm.
And you're taught that there's going to be two sides. There has to be two sides. And you'll be one side sometime, you'll be another side another time. But you have to learn both sides and how to have that point of view from one side
Mhm.
so that you can debate the other side
Right.
when you look across at them. So I think because I was also interested in performing, I was already on stage and singing and doing those kind of things. I was doing that in my family at the dinner table. So there was a debate right there, that somebody in the family, there were three of us siblings. Usually my brother would say, like, Mom, can you get her to sit down and stop doing blah, 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 blah. And I would discourse with my brother, who
Mhm.
was 6 years older than me. And when I didn't have enough words, because he was 6 years older than me, he had better
Right.
words and logic and argument, I would always resort to tears.
Mhm.
Because I would say, like, I don't stand a chance to win. I don't stand a chance. So I would feel sad for myself not being able to like quickly debate. So when I went into high school, my mother had said to me, X-nay on the acting things most of the time because she just came from her story of being a black woman in the South, Choctaw. No, she was Cherokee. And from, the stories I learned from my mother living in Suffolk, Virginia. So she just always knew about the value of education, right?
Mhm.
She was like, look, girl, I'm sending you to school. We bought this house for you. We moved our neighborhood
Mhm.
to a better neighborhood for you. Get your education. All this other stuff you can get later. Get your education. And if I said, I want to join this club or that club, she's like, that's not your education. But the debate team
Mhm.
was education.
Yeah.
And it was after school.
Mhm.
So I was able to like stay after school. So I felt like I was fulfilling my desire to be with people and perform almost and just be in public and talk out loud.
Yeah.
And I learned how to do that with being on the debate team.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You also mentioned your mother and her connection to education, which also I can relate to as well. My mom was a guidance counselor before she went into the nonprofit and philanthropy world, and now she's retired and enjoying her retirement and taking care of my two nephews. But she was definitely involved in that guidance counselor work. Her sister, who passed away, was a teacher and a principal, both in that whole education space in both New Jersey and in
Mhm.
Virginia. And then their youngest sister has definitely been a teacher, mostly in rural North Carolina, but also I want to say did some teaching around Delaware and some of the other areas of the country also. And then my aunt that lives here is a medical librarian. So as you can
Wow.
see, just on that side of the family,
Mhm.
education was very much an important part of the family. And then my grandmother actually helped create the first Black library in Raleigh, North Carolina, and her husband was a biologist and a biology professor over at North Carolina Central University. So education has definitely been part of our life, and of course, there's always been that conversation about even the talented tenth within our own communities and things along those lines. So I was just wondering, how important was education in your family with you and your siblings? It sounds like y'all were definitely being pushed to go into education, and it sounds like you were probably either second or third generation educated in terms of like college educated. But I was just wondering, how important was that journey for y'all?
Yeah, I might have almost been first generation college educated. Let me think. I think I might have been.
Yeah.
So my parents didn't have an education. My dad grew up in Natchez, Mississippi,
Hmm.
like up in the swamp and all that stuff,
Yeah.
because he was born in the reservation down there. At the time, it was just like swampy
Hmm.
and just nature. So that was my dad's school because he used to hunt and he used to fish and he was a Choctaw.
Right.
That's all they did was take care of the the tribe, the community, and especially because Jim Crow laws and other political systems that we were dealing with, that were just a lot of systems about hatred, hatred, hatred. So my dad really had to almost run away from the reservation and join the Navy to
Hmm.
get away, because otherwise he probably would have wound up dead. My mother was born in Virginia. I almost have to see her birth certificate if she had one, because she was born in 1921, I believe. And she was born to a young girl. My grandmother had a baby by a man that was quite older.
Right.
So there's some stories in there that
Mhm.
I never got to hear about because I was the youngest out of everybody in the family. That's why I was saying I'm thinking I was like first generation. There were a lot of people in my family, but I can't remember that we were boasting of their education.
Mhm.
Um, but it's just been an interesting journey. It's just been an
Sounds
interesting journey.
Sounds like, and one of the things you talked about that I know I've always been interested in as well is that love of nature. Because definitely my dad taught that to me to some degree, and definitely I think that he's teaching it to my nephews. Because even though they are 12 and 13 now, I remember when they were much younger, him showing them leaves and plants and even small animals and giving them that wonderment of nature. And even to this day, if I go outside, I am oftentimes finding the company of dogs and cats that have come up to me and become my friends, including like two that are up above me in terms of this apartment complex and all of that. So it does sound like part of that has been passed down even to you in the way that you were raised, this love of nature and a love of respect of
Oh yeah.
nature. So I would love to hear your thoughts
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, my mom and dad were like farmers. They were farmers, the whole neighborhood where we lived. So we left from Brentwood, Long Island. My parents bought another house. That would have been their second house. And they pretty much bought it cash. I think they had a small mortgage,
Right.
but they pretty much had saved enough money that they were not even needing to sell their house, but they could move and buy another house. So that was pretty badass. I never thought about it as a kid growing up. I thought about it as a homeowner buying a home. I was like, wow. But my parents, when they moved to that house, for me to be in a community that I could ride my bike and meet kids, it was pretty much lily lily. But I didn't notice the color of people's skin. I only noticed when black kids would say, like, where'd you move into? What house did you get? And I was like, I don't know, down there. And they were like, oh, because I live in the big house like yours. I was like, okay, I'm in a what? But it was true. Like the black families that had moved into that community were upwardly rising,
Mm-hmm.
had a great deal of education, enough education that they had really good jobs and they were able to buy expensive enough homes back in, I guess that was like the mid 70s.
Right.
And with redlining, it was hard to buy into these neighborhoods. So when we saw each other, it was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it was a big deal. I was just so happy to have friends that I could
Right.
like see. And then like I had a lot of white friends, a lot of white friends, a lot of white friends. Hey, black kid, hey, okay, oh another, hey, oh, like let's all play. And that's what we did. We all
Yeah.
played together. I didn't quite notice the discrimination until I became a high school student
Mm-hmm.
when I was getting picked on a lot.
Yeah.
And, maybe it started in ninth grade. I was in a middle school. And the kids that always were calling me out and wanted to fight me were the black and Hispanic kids.
Yeah.
And they were like, you think you're better than us? Because you got light eyes? Because you got long hair? You think you're better? You're not better than me. And I was like, so I did the thing my parents did not raise me to do. I ran away.
Yeah.
And when I ran home, my mother was like, oh, really? You came running home, huh? And that's how I got to know my mother better because my mother's like, well, first of all, I'm probably going to beat your ass because you ran home. But before I beat your ass, tell me what happened so I can tell you how to not run home again.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I didn't run home again. I was a good debater. So I was able to negotiate my way out of being picked on and called out.
Yeah.
But, people just always wanted to like beat me up and I just didn't understand why don't you like me? We're the same. Haven't we been playing together?
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized the caste system that communities make.
Yeah.
So as you get older as a student, you become more materialistic and aware of things and you become a consumer.
Yeah. Yeah, you
And
definitely do that. You were talking about your childhood. I was actually thinking about mine because I was actually did not have a lot of fights growing up. Have not had a lot in life. I mean, I'm definitely consider myself an activist, so I've definitely fought for causes. But in terms of like physical
right,
fights, not
it's
that many in
right.
life. Maybe one or two that were arguments, relationship based, and things of that nature. But in terms of physical fights, I do remember the one that I had in I want to say it was junior high, might have been elementary school, but I had moved to a rural part of North Carolina because we had lived in different parts of different cities like Greensboro, Raleigh, Durham, and different other ones. But we moved to rural North Carolina where my folks actually started a radio station up there, a community radio station. But when we moved there, I think I was in the sixth grade. So I'm thinking that fight must have been junior high. And I remember getting into a fight because you was a new kid in the neighborhood. So of course people were trying to gonna test you and things of that nature. And to this day, and even in my late 50s, I still don't know who won the fight because I remember going to the principal's office and the principal basically like after we had fought and fists were swung and different things like that. I remember going to the principal's office and like basically rubbing my eyes because I was a sensitive individual. So as soon as I got hit, I was in automatic tear mode. But I remember rubbing my eyes and then going like as the principal's basically punishing us. I think we got like a couple of days off for school as a
Ooh.
suspension. And I'm looking at his eyes and I'm going like, wait a minute. I
He
don't
said,
remember how I found his eye because he's got a black eye and I don't have any scars on my body, but I was in tears the whole time. So I don't know where the radar was coming that found his eye because I was
wow.
aiming for it, but I don't couldn't see it. So I don't know how this happened or anything, but somehow he got a black eye. I did not. So like I said, I'm sitting there going like I don't. To this day, I'm still trying to figure out where the fist landed on his eye and it got black.
Well, you had some good targeting. You had like that mental targeting that you said, if I hit something, it better be the eye. Boom.
That's right. Just kept going up and figuring about hit something that's going to be the
Wow.
eye. You had mentioned about, and I kind of alluded to it in that story about the way that our children are raised and everything. And even though we're part of the Funky Eye Puppets, I know some of the history of some of the puppets, but not all. So I don't know if you have any kids or not. But how do you feel about the way our kids are now? Because I even though, like I said, I have none, but I do have my 12 and 13-year-old nephews. Got friends with a lot of kids. If I add the collective up and everything, and I'm just sometimes wondering about their future. Because on one hand, I love what our young people, particularly our teenagers and young adults, are doing in that activism space. I do sometimes get concerned about this whole like culture where they all are trying to be liked by everybody and looking for likes all the time. And then, of course, I wonder about their future because I actually had a guest on one of these shows one time, and I understood his messaging, but at the same time, I was a little concerned because he was in that whole environmentalist movement. So he was kind of like basically saying that we as humans might not be here that much longer. And I'm going like, well, that's not what I want to hear because even if I'm only here for another 20 or 30 years, even though personally I'm going for 200, but even if I'm only here for another 20 or 30 years, I would like my nephews to live to, at least my age, if not longer, like their grandfather's age, my dad's age, and my mom's age, which would be late 70s, early 80s, and everything along those lines. But I was just wondering, what is your view, because you are involved in that children's space, about the view of how our children are doing and what you think their future is?
That's a great question. I have been doing this work for 40 years. So I've been able to see a lot of the changes in society and how it affects kids. For sure. I haven't been doing it as long as Ella Jenkins. She is, I think, 97 this
Right.
year, and she's still making records. I think Pierce did something for her,
Okay.
and she was able to see it and give him feedback, and just she felt good that we checked in with her. I used to visit her when I would go to tour through Chicago,
Mhm.
but I think what I would say is that the kids are going to be fine. The people are going to be fine if they have a relationship with Creator.
Mhm.
If families, parents, whoever's that work with children cannot just teach them about Creator and nature and the marvelousness of life, but represent it in their actions and their deeds, then children will be fine. But that's where the problem is because adults have kind of dropped the ball.
Mhm. Yeah.
Adults have dropped the ball. So we can't say, like, oh, the kids, they're always with these devices. Yeah, your ass better get some youth with you so that you can learn that device because our world is about to be AI. We're about to be in a meta state of being
Mhm.
because everything is automated.
Yeah.
And as we get older and older, and our mitochondria just starts to just completely die and fade away, it doesn't get rebirth, reborn, unless you're doing something now to prevent that from decaying so quickly. And we don't preserve ourselves. Black, white, red, anyone. And the ones that do, we could learn from that community that are living to 100 years old. There's plenty of people, I think, in Japan, they're still doing like their art at
Mm-hmm.
120 years young.
Okay. Yeah, that's real true. And you're right. They're doing it at such a young age in their mind because some of them might be going for that 150 or 200 because a lot of them have that kind of attitude. I know even here we had a woman who just recently passed. I want to say it was, if not earlier this year, last year, but I want to say Miss McLaughlin lived to be like 103, 104. And the last time that I saw her, which is maybe a year or two ago, or maybe a little bit longer than that, she was still full of energy. I won't say she was still driving in her late 90s and everything along those lines, but she definitely had that the joy of life. And definitely, I think that more people need to have that kind of joy of life and that positivity. One of the things that I've always picked up from you, Robbie, in the time that we've known each other, particularly in the Funky Eye Puppet, is that like Bessie and some others, I get this very spiritual connection from you. And I love that because I always consider myself more spiritual than religious because I sometimes think that religions get too caught up in the quagmire of their beliefs and everything. Because I remember watching this. I want to say it was on ABC, but a documentary, and I want to say it was one of the famous anchors like Ted Koppel that did it. And he looked at the world religions, whether they were Eastern or whether they were Western, and he found that most of them had the similar beliefs, which is a respect for your fellow man, a respect for Mother Nature, a respect for definitely your parents that brought you into the world, and a couple of other very basic principles that seem to be common sense principles for anybody. But then too
Howsoever,
often we get caught up in the personalities. We get caught up in
yeah,
the personalities.
nobody follows those rules. And that's the thing I've been learning since I've been reading a lot of Baha'i writings
Mm-hmm.
and just, spending a lot of time with Baha'i people that like to talk about God and the history of God and the history of mankind. If people would engage in conversations as such,
Mm-hmm.
they would find more benefit for whatever it is they want to do outside of that conversation.
Right.
I think that if people that want to go into politics to help the world and
Mm-hmm.
get into the government, if they talk to God about it
Mm-hmm.
and then spent time talking to God and just stayed with God and then become that politician,
Right.
then they might need to make a big community decision. They could talk to God about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing about all the religions on the world, that they're pretty much monotheistic.
Right.
They're all believing in the one God that there is.
Mm-hmm.
And all the different languages and colors and dresses and foods and sounds that we are. The thing that's the same is that we all love each other. We choose love.
Mm-hmm.
We choose to wage peace. We don't want to fight. We don't want to wage war. We want to wage peace. That's what we have in common.
Yeah.
If we had more opportunities to have that kind of information disclosed and revealed to people, then they could be encouraged to read Rumi.
Right.
And Ruhi, too, is a Baha'i writer.
Mm-hmm.
And read the writings of Baha'u'llah. Read the writings of not so much Jesus, because when he was around for us, we weren't able to capture his writings.
Right.
But in the 1800s, when the Baha'i faith was started, it was started for that reason, because it was a time of age that we'd be able to document it.
That
And
makes a lot of sense. That
yeah,
time of age and everything. And you were saying that I was thinking about a couple of things. One is that um, sometimes when we even think about people that are going through things in life, um, when they try to talk it out or when they try to talk to what I imagine that they are talking to God and everything, we as a society want to put a label on them and everything. Because I'm thinking about like the homeless people that might be having a conversation, and in their mind, they are probably talking to God and everything. And we are always asking people to pray But then when they do pray, we sometimes want to make it seem as if they are um, not being normal, or that they're not praying in the way that we want them to, and therefore we might label some people that are doing what I think is prayer as being a little bit abnormal. Because I'm going like some of those people that are in the homeless space or in the mental illness space or whatever spaces we might want to put them in, those conversations they're having, it is probably with God, and I don't want to judge what they're having. But some people that are watching might be like, they're talking to themselves, and I'm like, not necessarily. They might be having a conversation with God, and you need to
Yeah.
let them have that conversation.
And I say, like, have you volunteered somewhere like that?
Right.
Have you gotten to know some of those folks?
Mm.
Or you don't know them, right? You're just making a statement from somewhere you don't know.
Right.
Have you thought to go there? Have you thought to go around homeless people and talk to them? Oh, well, they always want money. They always want. Well, you would too if you were homeless.
Exactly.
But you'd also want a conversation. You'd want somebody to treat you like you're a human being.
Yeah.
And that's what, that's the lucky thing about waking up today, is that we have another chance to help spread that word.
I agree with you. Definitely need to spread that word, and I think it needs to be spread more often. You mentioned the Baha'i faith, and I do have some friends that are part of that, and I've definitely gone to a couple of those services. That Dilsey, who is a friend of mine that runs I want to say it's a musical group called One Human Family that is all over the country and everything, but she's part of the one
Yeah.
that is locally based, and
Oh, yeah.
definitely I know that they've done some performances here. But I just wanted to, if you could share a little bit more about how you got attached to the Baha'i faith, because I know Dilsey and her husband, who now have two kids, that's right, two kids now, are very much involved in that faith and have done a lot of work here. And I want to say that her, like an old time significant other of hers, was one of the musical directors. I'm trying to think of Eric's last name, but it's not coming to me. But I know he was definitely involved in One Human Family. But how did you get pulled into the Baha'i faith, and what about it draws you in?
Well, it's not that I was pulled into it. I am a Baha'i. I always have been. I just never called it anything.
Okay.
I'm nice to people. I help people. If you're hurt, I'll try to find a way to heal you. I'm not a doctor, but that's the citizen that I am in the world. So I always was, a creature of God, a creation of God. And I don't need a label. I don't need to be in anybody's building. I don't need to wear any kind of clothes. I don't need to. That's a human habit.
Right.
So I noticed the Baha'i faith when I sang at Dizzy Gillespie's homegoing.
Oh, wow.
And I met so many amazing musicians because it was Dizzy Gillespie. His peer group was amazing. They came to his funeral, and I was there singing. And I'm thinking like, oh, sugar ducky. Mommy, if you could see me now. Look at this. This is a funeral, but nobody's sad. It's in Inglewood, New Jersey, and it's at a pond. We're doing 100 trumpet salute to Dizzy Gillespie. Wow. 25, 25, 25, 25 trumpeters. And then a stage for the rhythm section and the vocalist. And the link. And I was like, what is this? Whatever it is, I just love it. I just love it. I love singing. I love meeting people. I love talking. I met Bob Dillard. I met so many elders that, and the fella that put the group together and wrote the piece used to work with Dizzy. So he felt it was his responsibility to do something to honor Dizzy. And he wrote a 100 trumpet salute. He didn't know 100 trumpeters. He was trying to find them. It was hard. He had to bring trumpeters from out of New York. He was bringing trumpeters from anywhere because he needed 100 trumpeters that were willing to come and play that funeral in Inglewood, New Jersey. And they showed up. And Jimmy Owens, I still work with and know. He's a teacher at New School now. And he was the one that pulled all of these musicians together. And I was like just new in the whole scene. I wasn't even doing club dates or anything.
Mm.
I was just trying to meet people to find out how do singers work and how can I keep it a secret? Because if I tell my mother that I'm working as a singer in New York, she's gonna be shocked. But I got into New York City because I got a job with Spike Lee,
Mm.
and I met a lot of filmmakers. So I wasn't a filmmaker at that time. I wasn't necessarily an actress at that time. I just needed a day job so that I could pay my rent because that was my agreement with my mother, and I didn't want to debate her about it. I just wanted to get that day job, keep that day job, and 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 just be Robbi in New York City and figure out what I'm supposed to do. And I was there with the Baha'is. Mike Longo just died. I think it was last year. He
Mm.
passed away, and he was a Baha'i. I think a lot of the musicians that were there were Baha'is,
Okay.
but I didn't know them as Baha'is because they didn't have a sign on their head that said that this is my faith. They
Right.
just were citizens of love and kindness.
Hmm.
So that made me attracted to the Baha'i faith and never forget it. When I came out to Oregon to do a trade show, Arts Northwest, I did my children's show. I think it was like the third time I had showcased in the Northwest and had always done a children's show. Did a great children's show because I had gotten down to like a science of presenting in 12 minutes to arts presenters.
Right.
It was a good showcase. And everybody loved it. I booked work, and this one lady was like super nice, really exceptionally nice, but did not want to book the show.
Oh
And
wow.
I was like, wow, you didn't want to book my show? She said, sweetie, you are talented, definitely, but I live in a community in Oregon that only has a lot of old people. We don't have children.
Mm.
We're like aging out, and people aren't coming back. The kids graduate and they leave, they don't come back. We don't have kids. And I was like, well, I'm a jazz singer. Zip up, zip up. She was like, yeah, I know. Oh my gosh, you must be a great jazz singer because you tell a good children's story. But you didn't do that today. I don't know you as a jazz singer. If you had done that, I probably would have booked you.
But
And I was like, thank you. Uh, I don't think I've ever told anybody thank you that's rejected me before. And she says, oh, honey, it's okay. You're talented. You know you're talented. I'm just a Baha'i. That's how we are. We're nice people. You're a Baha'i too. You just don't know it.
well,
And I was
but
like, I'm a Baha'i. I don't know what you're saying. Like you don't want to book my show. And I still stayed there. But I was thinking about it because I thought back to Dizzy Gillespie and
mhm,
all the nice people. And my comment to her, you're a nice person. Wow, there's something to this.
yeah, it sounds like it. But even that, I was thinking about that story that you told about the lady and the storytelling opportunity to get booked in different ways and everything. Because there's a person here in this area, Willa Brigham, who's a storyteller, and I think that she would primarily consider herself a children's storyteller, but she also tells the story about hats, which is a very adult story. So I'm thinking that most storytellers have stuff in their repertoire that even if it's children based, will also gravitate toward the adults as well, or a story that they can cater toward the adults. Because I know that Willa definitely does this amazing story about women and their hats.
Definitely, definitely, storytelling is a wonderful art form, and it's mostly because I'm a musician that I'm a good storyteller.
Right.
I'm not a storyteller first. I was a storyteller first to make a living as a storyteller, but I made money as a jingle singer and as a session singer. And a contractor, a vocal contractor, that's where I like really found my groove and found a place that I was really good at being. And there's debate, there's storytelling. Like when you're a contractor, you got to know how to navigate record labels, producers, and then studios sometime, and then artists. there's a lot of navigating and then paperwork, and it was a lot to learn. And then I found myself in that community of jingle singers. And they looked at me like, "Oh, you're a storyteller? That's so cute." Oh, do you do that at birthday parties?
Well,
And I was like, "No, I do that at theaters." And they were like, "Theaters?" I'm like, "Yeah. Remember you took a field trip when you were in elementary school? You had to get a permission slip, you get on a bus, you'd have to bring your lunch, and you'd go where? To a theater.
yeah,
You'd see a show." That was me.
that was you. You talked about being definitely involved in that jingle spaces, and I definitely don't watch as much TV as I used to. But I remember as a kid watching a lot of television, and some of those jingles I used to love the heck out of them. Some of them became like earworms because they just kind of like stayed in your uh, ear all the time, whether it was some of the ones around the telephone or even some of the ones like the Maytag repairman and other ones that were out there and everything. So I was just wondering, were there any particular songs that resonated with you that you had to perform, or were there any that also, as one that did that, even got on your nerves as well?
No. Nothing ever really got on my nerves. I just always was fascinated by television commercials.
Mhm.
I think it's an interesting business that people can make commercials and sell you stuff. Um, so I was interested more as a producer,
Mhm.
to know how that worked and how people got into that kind of lineup. And back when we were growing up, we saw a lot of commercials with white people in them,
Mhm.
but sometimes the voices were black singers.
Right.
There's a movie called 20 Feet from Stardom. Have you heard about it?
I've heard about it, but I can't remember the nature of it. But I've heard the name.
20 Feet from Stardom, what a singer is. Because the star is standing over there with the microphone in the front,
Hmm.
and 20 feet back are the backing vocalists.
You're right.
Do 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 do. And you're busy looking at that singer that you don't see those backing vocalists.
Mhm.
But that singer is listening to those backing vocalists to keep that beat,
Yeah.
keep themselves in syncopation. And um, they wanted to have that sound, people in advertising, because they liked it.
Hmm.
Like, how do you handle a hungry man? A manhandler can go but so far.
Right.
You're going to need another little flavor in the music. And they couldn't quite achieve that flavor without hiring some black people.
Hmm.
So that's why Motown was so powerful,
Hmm.
Funk Brothers, because they were just full time musicians.
Right.
They had other jobs, they were playing sessions, they were doing anything that they were needed for,
Hmm.
because that's how you do when you're an artist. You just want to work.
Right.
When people make the assumption that artists don't really work, like one of these days you'll get discovered and then you'll make it. You can make it. The minute you learn how to navigate your value and the things that you offer to people to be of value to somebody that will give you something in exchange.
Hmm.
They can give you a coin, they can give you a turkey fully cooked, they could give you a plot of land. There's
Yeah.
so many ways to reward someone that has a gift that's creative, painting pictures and all sorts of beautiful things. But I don't know, human beings quantify, oh, well, you're not as good as, well, blah, 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 blah. How many conversations do I have with people when I tell people what I do? They say, well, what you should learn about. It's like, no, you should learn about me.
Right.
Why are you telling me that I should go do somebody? Didn't I tell you I did this for 40 years? Maybe I might know something. Maybe not. Maybe, oh, wait, I don't know anything. What am I thinking? That was my ego. Sorry. I saw your ego. So my ego shut up. Oh. But,
It's interesting.
yeah, it's an interesting balance. So, in terms of kids, back to that, I think if we adults keep figuring ourselves out to be better human beings, then the kids will learn from what they see,
You know, I can
because
definitely see
kids
this.
watch. People watch each other.
Mhm.
and children watch each other. That's why Clubhouse is so interesting, because people in just an audio app, they're just feeling so free.
Right.
And the things we've heard over these months, right? People have just been so like childish
Mhm.
and making mistakes, hurting people's feelings. And then in the next breath, don't come on this app and hurt people because we don't do that in this room. We are kind. It's like you're almost saying it with such an angry voice.
Mm.
Do you understand the frequency that you are vibrating?
Well.
And all of these things are the stuff that could be spent teaching kids. Kids
Mhm.
can learn about vibrations.
Mhm.
They can learn about that. Nobody else is going to teach them.
Yeah.
Not going to learn it in school. There's nowhere that's going to teach them except somebody that's in their family or a friend like you in radio,
Mhm.
on the microphone. You could work with kids teaching them about things that they don't know yet, that will be essential for their life.
It's interesting you said that the roommate of a longtime friend of mine is actually, we were just having that conversation yesterday because they're going for a grant to create a podcasting studio in one of the urban areas of Durham and everything. So, well, Durham's an urban
Yeah.
city to some degree, but one of the neighborhoods that's more connected to our community and everything. And that's actually one of what our conversation was they were wanting to tell the stories of our elders, and they wanted, because
Yeah.
I was telling them a little bit, as you heard me just on this show talking about some of that ancestral history. So they were like, I need you to write and tell that story to the studio in one of these oral videos, but also teach the kids like you're talking
Yep.
about. So they were saying that we need you to teach the kids about what's going on in the digital space, because and how they can engage in it. And I was like, it was like a request that didn't need to be asked, because as soon as they asked it, I knew the answer was yes. So I'll definitely be helping them in that regard. But I know one of the things that you mentioned that I know my dad gets frustrated with, because he is also a visual artist as well, is that sometimes the society as a general whole doesn't always want to reward the artists that are out there, no matter how established they are. And I consider my dad to be very established in his photography and in some of his sound art and some of the other mediums that he uses and everything. But even he will sometimes get people that will be wanting to do the free performance or the cheap performance and
Hmm.
things along those lines, because they don't necessarily respect the worth of what they are getting. So that's something that I know artists has to battle with also. So as one has been in the field for 40 years and everything, how do you deal with that when people are trying to undervalue your artistic works and undervalue what you are about?
Um, that's a funny question. I don't really look at people that way, that I need to find some sort of approval from them.
Mm.
I'm really, happy with what I'm doing. When like this record, All One Tribe, comes along in my life, uh, it'll be great to get a Grammy nomination. It'll be the first time in my career, mashallah, that I am able to walk that walk. But I had no idea that I would be on that record. 2 years ago, I had no idea that I'd be on a record called All One Tribe and it would
Mhm.
be a Grammy contender. And here I am,
Right.
and hanging out with Pierce and Reese. I mean, like, so my 40 years got elevated.
Mm.
How could that be, right? Because you feel like, all right, I guess I'm at the point of retiring. When I was diagnosed with MS, I had a hard time accepting it,
Right.
because I just thought, like, I'm not sick. And like I had to kind of like put that in my pipe and smoke it. It was hard
Mhm.
to see myself that way, but at the same time, I don't see myself. I'm really not trying to be judgmental in any way, because whenever I do, I'll be making a mistake.
Mhm.
And I think that's what I've been learning from the Baha'i writings, is that, like, we have everything that we need. Anything we don't have, just ask God,
Right.
and then we'll have it. And then if we don't want to be patient, because that's a virtue that God has, an attribute that God has is patience. Because look at us. We're
Mm-hmm.
all still here right now. We woke up. God is very patient with us, because he could say, like, look at the mess on the planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we woke up. We're
Mm-hmm.
still able to move forward. But it doesn't mean that we have to repeat anything from yesterday necessarily. It
Right.
means that we can do something better than yesterday. So how can we find something that's better than yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get smaller and smaller. So there's always the the up close, the
Mm-hmm.
micro, and then the macro, right?
Right.
So you can look at things like, yeah, I gotta have this answer. I gotta know this. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. Or you can say, it's fine. Look, it's okay. Or you can find the place in the middle so that you have a balance that you can see,
Mm-hmm.
but then you still can see, but you're just not up on it too close that you can't see. Because then you won't be able to see a thing. And that's what I kind of, when I started reading the Baha'i writings, I thought, wow, these are just the nicest prayers.
Yeah.
And just so impactful for my life right now. Because I have a lot of spiritual books. I have a lot of books that I can read. I have optic neuritis right now, so I lost part of my vision because of my optic nerve being damaged.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm restoring it, even though
Mm-hmm.
my eye doctor says you can't restore and repair the optic nerve. It's one of the few nerves that can. I just say, nah, nah, la, 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 I'm not going to hear you. Because that's disturbing my vortex that is spinning so high. I'm asking the all knowing physician to help me. But thank you for your medical reports. And I feel I can see clearly now because the rain is gone. It's a nice sunny day in Portland, but I can see you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on this StreamYard
Yeah.
webinar. I can
Yeah.
see. I was able to log in. I'm on time. So those are the things that I want to um, repeat, repeat, repeat. Whatever I did to get here so that we could get here. And remember, we were trying to always, like, for a week,
Right.
almost 2 weeks, we were trying to, like, coordinate our schedules.
Right.
And I was realizing that I needed to coordinate to your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said, I can coordinate to your schedule too.
Right.
And then we were able to, like, you offered me accommodations.
Right.
And then I was able to just tighten up my screws and just do it wrong over and over and over and over again until I got it right.
Well, you're doing a great job, and I'm appreciating the conversation. You're truly a person that I have a great deal of respect for, and I love your energy, love your enthusiasm, and even the way that you treat this illness that you face and everything. Because, like I said, that aunt that I was talking about earlier when I mentioned the aunt that passed away, that's actually what she passed away of, was of MS. And of course, I've got another family member, namely my brother, that's fighting it now. But I can tell you that Aunt Carolyn lived through it for, I want to say, almost 30 or 40 years, because she was diagnosed many years ago and everything. But she always had that kind of positive attitude. That's always what I knew of Aunt Carolyn, was this very positive attitude. And while it may have taken the body away into the ancestral lands eventually, it was she was not going to go without a fight. So, as they like to say and everything. So I remember her both in the walking stage, and then the stage when she was in the wheelchair, because that's part of the reason that mom has a lift at her house, was that she needed to build that lift so that she could get up to the porch when she would come to visit her sister, namely my mom. And then I do remember the last parts when she was more bedridden and all of that. But definitely, I think that she, like, right up to the end, I think that she had a very positive attitude, and I think that that's part of what anybody needs when they are fighting whatever the ailments are and everything along those lines. So, what message would, based on your own experience, would you give for people that are going through what you are going through with MS? Those that, others that might be watching, that might be having MS and are frustrated by the disease, or I mean any other ailment for that matter, because there are so many ailments out there. But what advice would you give? Because one of the things that I love about the Funky Eye Puppets is that part of the troop that is the inclusivity troop, which includes some people that are MS, like yourself, that have faced that, but also gunshot wound victims. Troy with the blindness, and I think there's one other person that's blind as well. But definitely a lot of folks that are
Yeah, that's
facing what
great. Yeah.
different people would consider uh limitations, but I don't believe in limitations. Like I said, I've got dysgraphia, and it may stop me from being a driver, but as my mom once time said, because they were talking about a trip that I think that I was being asked to go on and everything, and mom's attitude was like, if Mark wants to get there, he'll find a way to get there, so don't worry about it. It was if it, basically she was saying, if it's to be, he will make it happen. So like I said, it might not be that he's going to drive there, but even if he's got to go someplace that seems far away, he will find a way to get there.
Oh yeah. You got to keep on keeping on. You know, keep on, keep on. Sky is the limit, and you know that you keep on. Just keep on pressing on. Sky is the limit, and you know that keep on. Yeah. So there's a lot of songs and a lot of music in our lives that can help us keep on keeping on. For me, I have been able to just find a great deal of joy playing this instrument here. This is called a monolini.
Mm.
And these vibrations go into my body because I put it on my lap, and then my cells feel all that vibration. And then, you know, if you've seen that little scientific experiment on YouTube, that when vibrations hit like sand on a piece of paper, the sand will form a shape,
Right.
hearing the vibrations. So it makes a beautiful geometric shape. It
Mm-hmm.
makes something so spectacular that you have to say, ooh. So this is what is healing my body.
Mm-hmm.
So as I eat healthier and healthier, detoxing and just being aware that what I put in my mouth has to be well, so that what comes out of my mouth is well and healthy, then I can start to procreate that kind of a vortex of goodness. And I think anybody that's dealing with any kind of challenge, if you don't know how to do that, you can just kind of start to talk to God. You can sing whatever songs you sing, whatever faith you sing, even if it's like Amazing Grace.
Mm-hmm.
Something simple, even if you don't have any words, you can just think about God and say, hey, I just have to have a conversation with you. I don't even know what to say. I think in the Black church we call that speaking in tongues.
Mm-hmm.
On Clubhouse they call it light language. But it's what you say when words aren't enough. And you can just say something, I don't know. I'm going to do it now since I stirred up God. My name is my hero. Oh my God. Oh my God. Remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope. My love for thee, thy love for me is my companion. Thy mercy for me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all bountiful, the all knowing, the all wise. Hey, yeah, yeah, him. Hey, and there, and hey, yeah, hey,
That was beautiful. It's very beautiful. Amazing.
So that was a little prayer that we just shared.
Yeah.
Thank you for praying with me.
Oh, no problem. I was glad to pray with you. That was very powerful and definitely very soothing as well. So definitely an amazing prayer, an amazing thought. When I think of people that are prayer leaders, they're not always the ministers of the world, because some of the greatest prayer leaders in my mind have been some of the musicians of the world. And you actually mentioned one earlier that you had the pleasure of talking to for a minute and everything. But I have a great deal of respect for, of course, Prince, but also definitely John Lennon. But when I think of John Lennon, I definitely think of Jimi Hendrix and Bob Dylan. And definitely you had the chance to talk to Bob at that Disney celebration. So I was just wondering, because I've never met the man, I just know what I've read and what I've observed. And he definitely seems to have that kind of warm spirit, very much like yours. So I was just wondering what that was like meeting with that true legend, Mr. Dylan. And I know it was in a space of celebration, because a lot of times that's what a lot of our like celebrations of bringing people into the ancestral lands are about. Because, like I mentioned, that Aztec celebration, they were also celebrating and honoring some of those that have passed on as
Yeah,
well. But I was just wondering your
that's
thoughts about,
this weekend. The Dia de los Muertos, Day of the
mhm,
Dead, is
right,
starting this next couple of days. So we can honor our ancestors. I never met Bob Dylan. My husband toured with him for quite a
okay,
while, but I never went to meet him on those tours. I think I was touring a lot, so I stopped after so many years meeting up with my husband when he was on tour
mhm,
because we had two kids. So I tried to split the difference between motherhood and working.
mhm,
Um, but I did. I know that he had a great time working with Bob Dylan. And Bob Dylan and Paul Simon are very good friends. I think they were in the Brill Building together. Carole King, all of them were together. James Taylor. I mean, they were in that day of music.
right,
And so there were. That's why 20 Feet from Stardom is a great movie to watch, because during that great Brill Building,
mhm,
all those songwriters in there, all white,
mhm,
there was still black music happening.
right,
That wasn't in that building. It was in Motown. It was in Cleveland. It was in different places.
mhm,
And I, 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 I know I had a great fortune to work with um, Aretha Franklin.
mhm,
So I learned a great deal from her, and I always learned something from Shaka. She's a friend of mine. That's the video that I was actually watching before we started our meeting,
okay,
because her sister has a son that has autism.
mm,
So um, Blair Underwood and his wife, they have an autistic child. Um, uh, Tisha Campbell
mhm,
has an autistic child. There's a lot of celebrities, black celebrities, that have autistic child. So they got together and made a documentary
mhm,
about being parents of autistic children. And one of the things they said in that documentary was that as they were talking about how frustrated they were, how they felt that they had failed God, that God had punished them, all sorts of emotions come up. At some point, you have to say, like, this is my child.
mhm,
I accept my child. I love my child. It's my child.
right,
And then they realized that they were learning from that child,
mhm,
and just the songs that the children would sing. They would say, like, you have to watch the documentary. They were saying, like, sometimes I would just like watch my child who would just get so lost doing something and singing and moving and just in their own space. And then I realized that I didn't know that space,
yeah,
and that I wanted to know that space. And I think that's the thing with all of us. God looks at us like, you should know my space.
right,
And many of us, we talk a good game, but we don't know.
Hmm.
None of us know. We can't judge somebody else and say they know better than you know, or that building's the building that you should go to because they're really that church. They're the ones. They're the ones. They're the ones. And then you get the church people together because I had dinner with some church people on Friday night,
Hmm.
and all they could do was gossip and backbite.
Right.
And that's one of the teachings of the Baha'i faith is like you are not supposed to backbite.
Right.
And we needed to hear it that way, backbiting. Because
Hmm.
when we read it in all these other writings over the thousands of years, we didn't learn it.
Right.
But backbiting, that's a really good word for 2021.
No, it's a very good word, and I'm thinking about the OJ song "Backstab," which is definitely along those same kind of lines and
Fire
everything.
in
And they
your
were telling
face,
us that
all
not
the
to
time
do
they
that
want my
at
place.
all.
The
So,
backstabbers,
yeah.
backstabbers. Yeah, black music. Again, we've known that truth.
Hmm.
Yet we still do the backstabbing
Yeah.
to each
And what
other.
else? Yeah. We do it to each other, and we also sometimes get caught up in and I know it's a tactic that's been around forever, but the whole kind of divide and conquer mentality. You were talking
Yeah.
about Clubhouse, and we hear it, whether it's between the vaccinated and the
Oh my God.
unvaccinated, or whether it's
Right.
between, trying to pit Native Americans against African Americans, or Hispanics against Asians, or even what we do to our LGBT brothers and sisters and
Makes
everything
no sense.
along those lines. Is we're trying to make judgments based on what we feel is right based on our lifestyles and everything. And I'm never going to tell a person what they should or should not do in their
No.
sexuality space and everything. I mean, there may be certain things that I think are abhorrent, or things that are very evil that I might not be able to deal with, like anything to deal with kids and animals. But outside of that, I think that we need to respect people for their wishes and their desires. But I've even seen people's families torn apart, because I remember when we were having the North Carolina whole bathroom bill, there were whole families that were torn apart over the rights of people to have a space that they were comfortable with and everything while they were using the restroom and everything. And as one of a friend of mine said, it's not like anybody I know is going there trying to compare notes or anything. That's like something that people may think about when they're kids, but not as adults, hopefully.
Not as
So,
adults, right?
right. So definitely.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that just made no sense to me, and all of that when that was going on. And like I said, I did know a friend of mine who's yeah, because it was one name and now it's another. So I think that they've made that transition over in terms of their identity and the way that they feel like identifying. But I know that that was a headache for their, at least one of their parents. I can't say both of the parents, but at least one of the parents. And I'm going like, do you still love the child? That's what should count, is whether you love the
That's what
child.
counts. That's right. And as we used to sing in that song, ain't nobody's business if I do.
Right.
If you go to bed on Sunday and then you wake up on Thursday, ain't nobody's business but
Mm-hmm.
yours. And
Exactly.
we just want to get involved in everybody's business except our own. We got a whole bunch of vortexes going on inside. We're all like moving vibrations,
Mm-hmm.
walking and talking vibrations. Get in sync with yourself.
Yeah.
And then reach out. Because then once you get yourself balanced, I think that you won't want to be disruptive to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You want to just say, you know what? That's the art that's spoken about in the Bible.
Yeah.
And the art or the not. And those words that nobody had bothered to define when you're little, but you know.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your eye on me, not else.
Right.
Not. I'm not gonna be naughty. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's where the word naughty comes from.
And I thought about that. That could be where the word naughty comes from, right from those
Right?
kind of like thoughts and all of that. Because I had never put it in that context. Like I said, I was just thinking as you were talking about that, that even the I know that Bootsy and others talk about the power of one. So it seems that even some of our musical genres that we've created, whether it's jazz or whether it's funk music, or one of my favorites, blues music, it definitely talks about a lot of the truths that are out there, but that we try to deny as humans. But it's right there in our music and in our culture and everything. And that's probably part of the reasons that certain cultures like to um, appropriate and sometimes maybe even misappropriate from us
Hmm.
as well. Because definitely, I think that a lot of times they don't even understand what's going on. That the name that you just said is actually what that celebration was, even though it was held on yesterday. So it was a Night of the Dead kind of celebration that they were
Hmm.
putting together and everything. And I remember talking to a friend that I've known for a couple of years, who's a artist and an activist in her own right, and she was talking about salsa music, and she was talking about how salsa music, the way it's taught now, is very, for lack of a better term, Eurocentric, and then some of the
Yeah.
people will walk by looking to see if you're wearing the right shoes, because I think that they
Hmm.
want to see you wearing ballroom shoes. And then one of the stories that she brought up was they need to actually listen to the music, because in one of the songs, which I did not even realize, Celia
Hmm.
Cruz apparently is actually rebuking the spirits in the song if they
Oh
actually
yeah.
listen to the lyrics. But they're
Oh
just
yeah.
busy dancing and not even paying attention to what Celia is saying in that song. And I didn't even realize that connection, even though I do
Yeah.
know that a lot of times even our Latin brothers and sisters are putting some very powerful messages into their music if we actually listen. So I was just wondering your thoughts about that. Because like I said, I just heard this story yesterday and I hadn't even thought about the fact that some of these people are getting our style, but not actually getting the messaging of what the music is supposed to be about.
Yeah. I think that is the power of black music. You know, our journey, no matter how this melanin is and where it is, we've had the same story.
Right.
That somebody comes along and says, like, all that stuff you got is nice, give it to me and get off the land. And if we can allow ourselves to remember that part of who we are, going back out far, so we can see how big our DNA chain is,
Mm-hmm.
we'll realize, oh, we are still connected to one another.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I've been learning uh, as I keep reviewing Black History facts, because I was a Black History Month assembly forever. I think I probably still am. And I didn't know a lot of facts. I
Mm-hmm.
know more now. Like, I didn't know that there were laws during slavery about Friday nights
Mm-hmm.
not being able to gather in their little cabins or
Yeah.
whatever. Did you know about this?
I want to say that Color Purple touches on that briefly. If you remember the scene where they were in the swamp area and everything, so I want to say that they touch on it briefly, but you have to watch it really in fine detail to realize that that's part of what that story is about. So that's the only way that I knew about it. It definitely was not something that was taught, and I agree with that. That's actually the reason that, and we've actually had arguments here on this network about it. I am if you're talking about CRT in the sense of it being the old Marxist way of doing it, then yes, I would argue that I am not a fan of. But I personally think that modern CRT is about us teaching our history and giving a wide inclusion of the history and things of that nature. So I think that
Uh,
sometimes we can things can be either mislabeled or relabeled, and people don't always understand the relabeling. It's the same thing that I think about defund the
yeah,
police, because I think that sometimes people think that that all the people involved in that want to like
yeah.
just get rid of the police department or defund
Fire the
them
ones that aren't doing
totally,
a
and I
good
don't
job.
think that that's what it's
Yeah,
about.
yeah. Fire the ones that have killed a lot of people.
Right,
Because they're not supposed to kill anybody. So
right,
fire the ones that keep killing people.
right,
They could be removed
exactly.
and serve some other way. Not kick them to the curb, but find another way for them to serve, because we all need to be serving
Hmm.
something. I think that I wanted to say something about what you had just said. For me to learn these facts now just
Hmm.
makes me want to go back into schools to start
Hmm.
doing assemblies again.
Right.
But since schools aren't the same anymore like they used to be, like, I can just do it online. I don't need to go anywhere. I can just do it and tell the stories that I want to tell. But I I thought it was an amazing fact to find out that there were over 400 slave revolts a day
Wow.
during slavery. How many years is that?
That's a lot of years, and that's a whole lot of slave revolts that we probably don't know about, because we only know about maybe two or three that we can think about. Of course, everybody knows about Nat Turner. Everybody definitely knows about Toussaint
Right,
in Haiti, and there
right.
might be two or three that we are aware about, but we don't think about the other
Hmm.
ones that were going on a regular basis.
That's right. They were going on, and And they've made movies. They've made a lot of movies that reenact those moments when you're on the plantation and something happens. But the fact that our own families don't keep that story alive in our family. To say, your great, 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 because we could be talking about our great, 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 greats if we chose to. One of the Baha'is that I enjoy being in her Zoom rooms is a fifth generation or sixth generation cousin from Harriet Tubman.
Oh, wow.
And when she calls a room to order, she's Harriet Tubman's relative.
Wow.
There's just something about her energy
Mm-hmm.
and her focus to be a truth teller and get it done as a short story because nobody has time to waste.
Mm-hmm.
So she does Zoom rooms that go on sometimes, for 5 hours.
Wow.
However, they're jam packed with not just yap, 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 yap. It's jam packed with so much that you don't want to leave.
Mm.
And I'm like, wow, it's not even that she's telling a story. She brings other speakers in, and all sorts of people she brings in to speak about everything that we're talking about.
Right.
They don't have to be Baha'i. They don't have to be anything in particular. They just have to be an activist wanting to make a difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So if we would all be able to remember that we come from a long line of people, when the slaves were on that boat, when they were coming across, they were bonding with one another. And they were perplexed at what was going on, but they did it together. They knew that they were speaking different languages, that they couldn't move, that they were never, ever in that position, ever. So something must be up. But spiritually, they knew how to go to that place. Could have been just a chant, could have been a song. They were singing in those bellies of those ships.
Oh, I'm sure.
And they were able to come here still intact.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they were so much beaten and killing and breaking down, because they were like, y'all don't want to be broken? No. It's impossible for us to be broken.
Impossible is to be broken, and we were also using the storytelling even back then, because I remember even reading the various storytelling about us not just going back to the motherland, but actually flying back to the motherland, and a lot of those kind of stories that were very much part of the slave narrative and things of that nature. One of the guys that comes on our show here is from Australia. I think he's I know he's of Asian descent, but I can't remember. I think originally from Fiji or one of those islands and everything. But one of his complaints is that he feels that we are guilt tripping our brothers from other cultures. And I think that it's not so much guilt tripping as it is that we want to acknowledge what happened in the past and things of that nature. But we're not saying that it's going to be that they have to be feeling guilty about what their ancestors did. But I do think that, at least in my philosophy, they need to at least understand what was going on in that time and everything. But I was wondering your thoughts about that, Robbi, because I've heard this even in Clubhouse, where people will sometimes mention about this feeling that they don't want to have to basically pay for what their folks did in the past.
Well, God told us how we were going to pay it back. He told us what generation would be paying it back. I don't believe that either the Bible or the Baha'i faith says that we're still in that punishment.
Right.
We're coming out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And God is going to just drop on some blessings that the whole world will change itself and then maintain it for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So that is the time that you and I are living in, that we are watching the world rediscover God.
Right.
And then once we rediscover God, we can actually go places. Because then we'll be able to know who we are.
Right.
Eat better. Stay healthier. Overcome illness. Scientists are working on technology. Biologists, pathologists, they're all figuring it out. I mean, there's this stuff called ASEA. This is a cell signaling salt water.
Wow.
That's what science has done. They've redoxed a salt crystal that when you drink that water, it goes straight to the cells that are dying
Wow.
and restores them.
Yeah.
Now, when we're 95,
Hmm.
because I'll be saying, like, when can I do your show?
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
doing the show this week? Is it Monday, Wednesday? What day? But when we're 95, we'll be able to do a webinar like we're doing
Hmm.
today,
Hmm.
talking about when we were in our late 50s
Right. Hmm.
and what life was like 50 years ago. Well,
Right.
that's when the coronavirus showed up.
Hmm.
The what? Oh yeah, we had a little bit of a little thing going on, but that's in the past.
Yeah, it's gone.
And then we'll have bionic arms, or who knows what we'll have. We'll just be able to live longer and stronger with the cooperation of our hearts and minds and technology,
Hmm.
science. Because God makes us smart people.
Oh yeah.
We're going to discover more and more and more and create more and more and more.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's what's nice about the Funky Eye Puppets. Because I kind of stumbled into that room like I stumbled into many rooms on Clubhouse. But as an artist, I don't want to be in most of those rooms. I like to
Hmm.
be in a room with creative people. And when IPC was like pulling out his bag of tricks, he just kept pulling them out. And then he was like, here's one for you. Here's one for you. Here's one for you. Here's one for you. It's like, you have more? He's like, oh yeah, I got more. Here, have another one. Here. And it's like, oh, I needed to be reminded that I have a bag of tricks myself.
Yeah.
And I also have a project manager that is helping me to maintain my career through multiple sclerosis. So I have to pay him.
Hmm.
I can't get too many of the things involved with
Right.
because otherwise I lose time for that project that I'm spending a lot of money to build. Because I had to, like I'm just trying to come to a resolution of how to keep working as a person with MS.
Yeah, not only that, but you just mentioned something that I find fascinating. I know I'm guilty of it as well. Is that those of us in the creative space, no matter what the creative space is, whether it's radio, whether it's performance, because I do have theater friends or singing or whatever. We love sharing our gifts. We love sharing our gifts. We love definitely spreading the word. I find most of us in some way or another are, as my friend Daryl would put us, a lot of us in the spoken word community are also part of the, well, not spoken word, but just the creative community are also part of the griot community. So we're definitely
Hmm.
part of that griot
Hmm.
ancestry and everything. I mean, I think the average radio DJ is one of those, definitely the average singer and everything. When I say average, I'm not talking about skill set, but just being the regular ones and everything. But that being said, I think that we sometimes have a tendency to stretch ourselves too thin. I think that even is what is happening with some of the folks that are working what I call survival jobs, because unfortunately the arts doesn't always pay what we want either. So then we wind up working at either the restaurant. I know that's the stereotype in New York and California, or the modern
I
version
never,
of that is
I never
driving
did it for
DoorDash
those.
or working for Uber and things of that nature. So I just wonder,
Yeah.
how do you do the life balance thing and everything? I imagine it was even harder when you had a spouse, but your kids are grown now and everything. But even with them in your life, even exes stay in your life to some degree. So how do you balance the work life balance? Because I know that that's a struggle even for me as a single individual in my late 50s. But I do know that it's a struggle for many of my friends that are in all types of arts and everything. So I was just wondering, how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think I've been able to live vicariously through my husband's journeys because, man, he's had a really great career. And I'm so proud of him that he made such a difference in South Africa
Hmm.
and really touched the world. The whole world knows my husband's sound. And, because it's recorded, the whole world will continue to know it. Records will always be able to be played. And I feel really blessed. I feel really blessed. We just got divorced about a month ago
Mhm.
after 28 years. Um, so I feel like, wow, it's just me, myself, and I. Ego, super ego, and it. Shut up. But Me, myself, and I. I'm back to Robbie Hall.
Hmm.
Oh, Robbie Hall. Oh, I remember her. What year do I want to remember her in? It's like 1985.
Mm.
1985 for sure. Because that's when I was in New York City and just like starting to make some nice connections with people and finding so many ways to keep working without having to have that restaurant job
Hmm.
because I wasn't good at restaurant jobs. I didn't, I didn't do well at those jobs. I don't know if maybe I had MS then or something, but I wasn't good at a waitress because you have to really have good coordination
Right.
and timing and things like that. And you have to be able to be swift, instantly swift, especially a nice restaurant. You gotta. So I remember I worked at a restaurant, and the owner of the restaurant um, had somebody sit in my station one day, and that person said to me, you know, his name was Mark too. Mark, the owner, is my friend, and he asked me to sit in your station so that I could give him feedback on how you are as a server. I'm going to tell him that you really suck,
Oh wow.
but you're a really nice person.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, thanks. And he said, yeah, I had asked for ketchup. You didn't bring my ketchup. I had said that I needed another napkin. You didn't bring a napkin. So you didn't listen to me. And that's why you're not a good waitress. But you're a really nice person, and that makes up for it. Here's a $20 tip, or whatever. He gave me a very generous tip. And then we pooled our tips. So I had to go put it in the bucket with all the tips. Because it was an interesting job being a waitress.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to get fired. I just knew, like, no wonder it doesn't feel comfortable for me. Like, I'd rather talk to the people. Like, I'd rather entertain them than wait on them. So years later, I lived catty corner across the street in Prospect, in Park Slope from the restaurant. And my friend that I had done children's theater with was a waitress there. And she says, you live down the street now? You want to come back and be a waitress? And I was like, no. But I want to bring the band there. I married this guy from South Africa. We have a nice band together. Can you talk to the owner for me? She says, yeah. Of course, Mark would book you. You used to work here, of course. So we did.
Mm.
We did a gig there. And when I was on that side of being a waitress, that's when I knew how many blessings I just had an abundance of, and how lucky I was to marry a husband like I did. It was pretty cool.
Sounds like it.
Pretty
I
cool.
only tried one job that I can remember being a waiter, and I didn't like it either. That was actually with a famous person. Well, at the time it was named after him. It then went on to become the Duke Children's Classic. But the time that I went to work for Duke, and it was like one of them part-time jobs because I've had a series of those in my life and everything. It was actually for the Perry Como Classic because that was, I
Oh,
remember having to
nice.
shift around, and they were having the big banquet, and I think there was probably various celebrities there. I don't even remember who they were, and of course
Wow.
Perry was living, so Perry was there performing. And I remember trying to shuffle glasses and things around, and I'm like, I don't think I like this job. So it
It's
was that one
hard.
job that I did. I'm like, this is not the answer because, like you, I probably wanted to engage in conversations, but you were just having to do the whole serving thing, and I'm like, nope, don't think I want to do that. So I don't. I think I only did it 1 year because I don't think that they even bothered to apply for it the second year. But I do know I had that experience. I was like, nope, not the answer. But I do have a fascinating story that's not the answer to that you will get a kick out of, which is also involving Duke. What a friend of mine was in that medical space. So he was a former, I want to say professional football player, but definitely had played. I want to say at Duke as well. But he was had a spinal injury, so he had created like this spinal bifida association and everything. So he had created that, and then they were doing a fundraiser, and some of my friends are in that event planning space. So they planned this fundraiser, and they were trying to get the entertainment together. So I decided to help them with the booking of the entertainment. I think I might have asked some jazz friends of mine, some other groups and everything. But
Mm.
what I eventually got was a children's theater group that performed for these doctors and everything. I want to say it might have been the Ragtime Theater or something like that. But if you can
Mm.
imagine people that are coming in a costume that's kind of like one of those fairy tale costumes, it was one of them cases where I probably misbooked. That was one of my valuable lessons about misbooking, and you need to book for the audience, because I just remember everybody looking at me like, "What the heck were you thinking?" When these people came in and watched this performance and everything along those lines and everything. So, like I said, even I kind of had some more successful bookings since that time, but that was a case of not making the wisest decision in the world.
Yeah, that's a good way to learn, right?
Yeah.
Good way to learn on the job. I'm glad that I was able to work for Lincoln Center because that was one of the first trainings that they gave is like, do not come into a school dressed like an artist, being an artist that you are, because schools are not, you know, theater spaces. They're not
Right.
creative places. Schools are a system. You got to know how to walk into that system and how to speak like the teachers speak. And I was like, oh my gosh, my sister didn't tell me that. But I learned so many things that I was able to apply in other parts of my life about, just working with kids in such a way that you don't give it all away to them so that they have enough room so they can figure it out on their own.
I fairly agree. You don't do that and everything. I just wish that I had, and I probably did. I just wasn't as active with it at the time. I just wish I had had my camera phone with me, because I'm thinking the camera phone might have been there. Because just the look on the doctors' faces was probably one of like just utter shock and utter everything else and everything along those lines. So, like I said, I wish I had had that
Oh.
picture just so I could have it with me to remind me what not to do to this
I'm
day
sure
and
that
everything.
I'm sure there was somebody there with a camera that caught those pictures because that must have been some
Exactly.
and then childish curiosity like, oh.
Yes, because I think there were some people that were actually enjoying the show, because we all have that inner child in us. So you were probably right. There was probably some people there that were, because the group went ahead and did their performance and everything. So there were probably some people that were having that moment of childish curiosity, but also trying to be overly adult. So they were probably like trying to deny
Yeah.
that inner child. They were probably trying to, like,
Oh
looking at
yeah.
their whatever the version of their version of the top surgeon is, going like, I really don't want to giggle at this, but the truth of the matter is I do want to giggle at it and everything. So I'm sure there was some
Yeah.
of that going on as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what I learned from as I aged up, as my kids grew up and started to age up. The material that I was writing was starting to age up too. And so I realized I can't always work in elementary schools anymore. And because sometimes an elementary school teacher would go up to the middle school level, they would call me up and say, like, do you have any shows for seventh graders by any chance? Because I'm in a middle school now. Do you have anything? And I'd say yes, because you never say no.
Right.
And then I thought, do I have anything for seventh graders? What is a seventh grader? I'll take my old show in there and then I'll see where I need to change it and what the seventh graders will like. Yeah. Talk about changing it on your feet.
Mhm.
Within the first minute, you knew. Like, they're not going to buy it.
They were.
They are not going to buy it. Oh, wait, they'll buy most of it. They're still little,
Mm-hmm.
but they're super. I'm going to be smart next week. So I learned the way to kind of bait the audience.
Right.
As an older group of kids, they're listening to the words. Younger group of kids were more interested in the way that I was moving.
Mm-hmm.
So it was almost like a living TV show, a live theater.
Right.
And then when I got into the junior high school, I couldn't say like, "Hey kids, I want to tell you about this leopard that would roar." And they'd look at me like, "Why are we here? Can I please leave?" And you don't want to revolt in your assembly program. You got 500 kids in the assembly. You can't have one grade level, two or three of the kids saying like, "This sucks.
Right.
Let's go. Why are we here? this isn't meant for us. So I did not want those comments to actually appear. And I was just curious myself to see, like, what am I going to do?
Mhm.
What am I going to do? So that's when I started to give more factual information in my storytelling. So I could still roar and do all those things. But then I could also say, like, y'all, I know you know what a leopard sounds like and with the teeth and the claws and everything, but think about it. He was not being a nice person, was he?
Mhm. Oh, that
What
makes
do
a
you
lot
think
of
about
sense.
that? And I'd
Yeah.
say, so who has an opinion on what's up with the leopard? Raise your hand and let me know. Nobody does that in a school assembly program with 500 kids.
Mm-mm.
You need to have good teacher skills to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what I got from my sister, watching her in the classroom.
Yeah, definitely got those teaching skills, and it's amazing those teaching skills that you've got and everything. I was just actually thinking about how a lot of times uh, we got new respect for teachers during this pandemic, but I'm wondering whether it's going to be kept respect, because that's one of my concerns with any of the things that we learned during disasters. It was also my concern about
Mm-hmm.
the niceness that we had doing not just this disaster, but even Katrina and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
then I wonder, do we have a bad habit of falling back into old habits? I'm hoping that we don't just respect teachers because we're in the middle of a pandemic, hopefully winding out of it, but did we keep that respect? Because I'm actually one of those people that think that teachers need to get better pay and have needed better pay for years and
Yeah.
everything along those lines.
Yeah, I think we've always felt that way about teachers. But it's up to, just the way our systems are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're seeing a lot of people that are saying, like, hell to the no. I'm not going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do this my way. And
Yeah.
then they're creating another system. So there's more homeschooling, there's
Mm-hmm.
more opportunities where families are able to teach their children more. The Baha'i faith is that kind of a faith.
Mm-hmm.
You teach it to your children. Your children grow up, they teach it to the adults.
Okay, that makes sense. So they teach it back to the adults.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's that.
I was like, God, you were wow. Like you sent Baha'u'llah.
Mm-hmm.
He had a son, Abdul Baha, and then there's a grandson in the family tree that also were advocates for this faith because they realized the world's not going to be able to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
The world is not going to be able to handle this man in Iran being born rich as a Persian,
Mm-hmm.
an upstanding family, talking to God.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Persia, they were like, "You're going to tell us that that's not in the Quran exactly. You're not supposed to change the words of the Quran." And Baha'u'llah was like, "I didn't. I added.
Right.
It's not me. I'm just telling it to you. Write it down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the one making this up. Do you understand? I'm talking to God."
Mm-hmm.
And people didn't want to believe it. They arrested him, threw him in a jail. They threw him in a jail that was in the ocean.
Right.
And he just lived there for years.
Wow.
His family would come visit him. One of his kids died at the jail because the kid was
Mm-hmm.
playing on the roof and fell through a hole.
Mm-hmm.
And the son said, "Dad," his father, the manifestation, or whatever he said, "Father, please let my life be a sacrifice so that people can learn about the Baha'i faith.
Yeah.
If you weren't here in jail, we'd be at home. We'd be free, but we're not. And we're here with you, and I'm here with you, Dad." So, yeah, I fell. And I think he pierced himself with like the gate or something. So he was not going to survive. But before he died completely, he said, "Please, Father, my life is a sacrifice. Please tell people." Now, look, I have been a Christian all my life. but I sure didn't know all of these stories so personally like that. I heard stories that were told by somebody telling a story told by somebody, and the black churches, there's a lot of hooping and hollering on in the pulpit. Well, Ezekiel, and it's like that's a great show.
Mm-hmm.
What did I learn as a little
Yeah.
kid in church? I learned how to, as an actor, be that preacher,
Right.
and that's what who is the guy on Saturday Night Live, right? Ooh wee,
Yeah.
what's up with that? Ooh, what's up with that? That's a take on the black church right there.
And the black church is fascinating because I did go to a friend of mine had me going when I was living in another apartment complex to what amounted to like a Pentecostal, a charismatic church and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember seeing, the same drum beat. And I think I might have attended maybe 10 or 12 services roughly, but the same drum beat and the same elderly gentleman running around at the same time. So while I do think that there are moments of definitely people speaking in tongue, which you referenced earlier, and definitely some other miracles that can happen in that space. I also do think that there are some churches that it's nothing but an act, and sometimes it's not even a good act. Because, like I said,
Yeah,
if
but
the same thing happens the same time and everything, then you're going like, "All right, I can't really buy this."
and they're like our politicians. It's all about the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the dollar. And we don't really want to research where the dollar comes from because if you go back far enough, far, 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 all the way back to when
Mm-hmm.
we started to exchange gold coins.
Yeah.
Because before that, we just said, look, I got some extra eggs. Can I have some milk? You got a great goat.
Mm-hmm.
Can I have some milk? Here's some eggs. Great. I'll give you eggs tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll give you milk tomorrow. There's my store. My neighbor.
Yeah, bartering is a wonderful thing. We need to do more of that bartering. I wish more of that was going on, but I also wish that, and that's what I was going to ask you as well. I sometimes think that while I love technology, I definitely love Clubhouse, some of the other apps that I've been using and everything. I do sometimes regret the kids not doing enough of what I consider like outside regular play and things of that nature. Because sometimes I sit there and not just my own nephews, but other kids, I'm going like, do y'all ever go outside? And I know even during this pandemic, I've been guilty of not going outside as much as I should as well. So I'm not even going to put it just strictly on the kids, but definitely as one that loves our kids and everything, I do sometimes wish that there was more of that playtime. And maybe they are playing, but I'm just not seeing it as much as I would like.
Well, go outside and set the example. You
Right.
got to see who's out there playing, actually. Go
Yeah.
outside and then see what game they're playing. Maybe it's a game you can play, or
That's
maybe it's a
true.
game you can give them advice on, and then they'll be like, but they want that interaction
Right.
because otherwise nobody goes out there to talk to them.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
you'll be that old man that comes walking up. Oh, here he comes again. He's going to tell us a story about something. But you'll be that man.
Right.
You'll be that elder in the community.
Yeah.
And then you'll be the griot that you are
Yeah. Well, that
in
makes a
real
lot of
time.
sense. It makes a lot of sense. I know a friend of mine did an event at Haytime. It was actually a skate party. So I was actually talking to her um, yesterday. Well, yeah, yesterday. And she was saying that they're going to do, I think, 5 more, but they're actually going to do it at a historical hospital. So they're going to activate that part of the area as a skate
Yeah.
park. So the other part, which is at the same Cultural Arts Center, Haytime, that I work at, was where the jazz and everything else will be. But they're only maybe a block or two apart from each other. So it'll be almost like a mini block party in that
Yeah.
sense. But the first one will be in February, and I know that she's already said that there'll be a full skate, one of those portable skate parks, and people will be out there skating. I'm not going to lie and say that sometimes the inner child speaks to me, but you don't always want to listen to it because the last time that they did it, I did see the people with the skates and the roller skates, and I did think about going there, but then I remembered a fall that I had 10 or 15 years ago where I broke an arm, and I remember that I was never a great skater in the first part, so I did talk myself out of it and
Out of
everything.
that.
So,
Yeah.
huh?
I said,
So,
you talked yourself out of that. Wait a minute now.
yeah, that we do that a lot in our lives. I've even probably talked myself out of jobs. I've definitely could have talked myself out of the Funky Eye Puppets, but I know I've definitely talked myself out of job opportunities. So I was just wondering, how do you deal with that as well? Because sometimes our inner critic can be our worst critic. So I'm sure that even you faced that in your 40-year career, where sometimes you might have been wanting to go for something and not gone for it. So how do you deal with that inner critic, and not even the outside critics? Because I'm sure that our parents and others can be our worst critics, but definitely our inner critic can be one of the worst ones.
Yeah, I don't really critique myself. I start another job or something. Like I create something new. So whenever I'm feeling frustrated, I create something new. And I just don't like frustration.
Hmm.
I would rather do something else. And I said that to IPC one day. I said, Juniper is a cute little character, but honestly, Tuesday or Thursday, she's not really in the script. She's in like 2, 3 scripts on Thursday.
Hmm.
And now that he's doing the BK Han NFT room,
Hmm.
there is no Juniper script.
Hmm.
So I was thinking, like, oh, I'm not going to take it personal. I can go do something else. So I'm going to do an NFT room myself
Okay,
because
that
I'm a
makes
really
sense.
good storyteller.
Oh yeah, totally. It's actually in the NFT space, was actually involving. I want to say it was NFT Tony, who's in Clubhouse as well, was actually the one that led the whole Bootsy celebration, which actually, ironically, his birthday and my brother's birthday are on the same, which was this past Tuesday and
Yeah,
everything.
this past week, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But the celebration was this past weekend, so it was like, I think, Saturday or Sunday. But his actual birthday was on Tuesday, which is also my brother, younger brother's actual birthday as well. So definitely
Well, that's
they have
Bootsy
that
Collins.
shared space.
That's Bootsy Collins.
Bootsy Collins is October 26th.
Okay, because my husband did a record with him. I feel like Snoop was on that record too.
Yeah, I know that Bootsy did a record with Snoop, and he had different other people, so it's quite possible.
Yeah, could you find out that record so I can find out what it is? Because I
Yeah,
think my husband's on it.
I can definitely do that.
Because I
Bootsy
think
Collins.
Snoop Dogg said that too. One of them said like, "Give me that bass, Biggie," something like that on the rap, and I was like, "You on a rap record? We got a show to do. What? Come this way. Oh, you going that way? See you."
Interesting
But
the way
yeah,
you describe your connection to your um, ex-husband and everything, because that's actually, even though they're married, that's kind of what Bootsy talks about when he talks about Peppermint Patty. And I met Peppermint Patty through my buddy Zach, who is the guy I was talking about with the funk music band and everything. Because even at that birthday party, Patsy was talking about how she was one of those people that had no clue who Bootsy was, and that's, I think, part of what attracted Bootsy to her, was that she was not into the funk music. She now is part of that because of being part of his marketing and business team and everything. But in terms of like being a fan and a fan girl, that wasn't her thing, and that's part of what I think attracted them to each other, was that she really had no clue as to who he was, because she hadn't grown up in that part. I think she was like what some people would consider a country girl and
mm,
things along those lines, but she was definitely not involved in any of the urban community that brought funk music to us. So I just always find that fascinating when she talks
wow.
about it, and he also talked about it during his birthday celebration.
Yeah, I don't know. I think when I met my husband, I met him because I worked for Paul Simon, so I had already worked for my husband pretty much before we got married because he was in the band. I worked
Gotcha.
for Paul Simon's production company. I was that person because I had a day job and I was happy to be the, person that was that production support staff. I had all sorts of titles over the years, but basically, somebody will ask me, years ago, somebody would always ask me to make coffee at some point, no matter what jobs I was doing. It would always come down to like, Robbi, could you make us some coffee? We have to have an important meeting, and it's like, and all the jobs I've had, people know that I speak a lot of languages. So that's part of the reason why they give me the job,
Hmm.
because there's something that they need, somebody that can speak French or Spanish or German. And then I'm able to work that job. But I think with my husband, He really had his own thing. And I wasn't a groupie. I was working for Paul Simon. And then my husband called up because Paul Simon owed him a check. And I had been working for Paul Simon long enough to see how the black artists were getting screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mambazo, all of them were always getting like ripped off. And nobody wanted to speak up about it because the whole office was like sweeping it under the rug. Like, what are you talking about? Is that your job to get into the books? You're not an accountant. It's like, I'm not in the books. I'm just sitting at the desk watching who comes in and gets paid and the amount of money that you're giving people. And I remember one of my bosses said, "Oh, they're African people. That'll be a lot of money in their country."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I have that kind of feeling when I met my husband about all the musicians. So the day that he called to say that he was owed a check, I stood on a soapbox and I was like, you know what? This musician is owed some money. Who else is owed money in the band? Let me find them. I'm going to find them. I'm going to find them. They said, oh, write the check. But don't sign it because you don't have signing privileges. Go write the check because you're right. We owe them money. Write the check. So I wrote the checks for the band, and my husband came in, and I had only spoken to him on the phone, so I knew him from talking to him on the phone. And I just loved his accent. I loved his voice. And he's very soft-spoken like this. So when he was talking on the phone, he was always like this. I need the money from the show. Please ask Paul to give me the money. So I was like, oh, I'll get the money for you. Don't worry. I need to get this money. And I became a champion for the musicians. So Mambazo, when they came into the office, I was like, Joseph, Baba Shabalala, I have your check. He said, oh, Sis Robbi. Oh, you have it. Oh, thank you. I was coming to ask, we all come here for. And I was like, oh, I do have a good day job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm useful. I can't sign the check. But yeah, okay. And the only reason why I couldn't sign the check because I wasn't on the bank account as a signer.
Right. You weren't a signer on there.
But I had already diminished my own thought. Like, I'm not a math person. I'm not accounting. I can't. The person that was the accountant, the bookkeeper, she was a rocker. She was like a punk rocker.
Mm-mm.
She's very famous because I forget who it was. But one of the famous photographers in the 60s, early 70s took her picture nude. And she was a young kid, so she had like a flat chest. I mean, she was old enough to take a nude picture, but she was so young that she wasn't developed, and it became an iconic picture. I almost feel like it was Andy Warhol or somebody like that took her picture. Okay. So she became like famous for that reason, but nobody knew it was her. Because when she'd have clothes on, she was just like singing in a rock band.
Yeah. And
she was the person that when I said to her, can I have the checkbook? I have to write the checks. And she's like, oh, cool. Who gave you the number? Because I've been waiting for them to tell me how much to write the checks for. You just asked? Who, Danny? Or was it Mark? And I was like, it was Danny. She's like, oh, and he told you? And then I'm thinking like, I'm way too deep in this job. I don't want to know all these things. I don't want to know all these things. I just want to help people.
No, definitely, yeah, that helping kind of personality and everything. Oh, by the way, that song that Bootsy and Snoop Dogg did was "Jam On," and is actually on a song that I'm very familiar with because I think that Zach has played it a couple of times, which is "The Power of the One," which is the latest one. And I just realized as I was looking that up for you and everything that Snoop is actually Bootsy's nephew. So apparently they're related to each other.
Does my husband get album credit on it?
I can look at the whole album and everything, but I can see if he
there's
has
a Kumalo on there.
I will see if it's got credit because I could look at see if I can see the credits for the Power of One, because I know that that's the latest one that he put out. I think there's another one coming out
Wow.
shortly of everything, but Power of One I think was last year that came out and everything. So
Wow. Because that recording that my husband did, that's been in the can probably close to 10 years.
and they may have done others, but I know that Snoop is definitely on this latest one, which is 2020, and I think that they're
Yeah.
releasing one very shortly as well. So I do know that. I don't see that I pulled it up yet, but I'll look that up
Yeah.
and see if I
Yeah.
can't
Snoop,
find it out.
everybody's busy. Everybody's busy reinventing themselves and
Oh
doing
yeah,
more and more and more.
oh, it's all about
So,
reinventing. A lot of people are reinventing themselves on a regular basis. How did you get involved with this children's album? I know we mentioned it at the beginning, but and I know, like I said earlier, that Pierce, who I've known since he was definitely a young person, knowing both Nina and Phil and everything, and definitely both myself and my parents have gone to their Christmas parties and some of the other things that they have done
wow.
historically and all of that. But I think the parents have been more than I have, but I've been at least two times and
Wow.
all of that, but once or twice.
How
But I was
cool.
just wondering, how did you get involved? And then, of course, Reese, I met her and her husband when she first started moving down here and circulating around the music community locally, and we've actually become pretty good friends. They're always teasing me that they're going to find me the uh, that significant other and everything. And I'm like, well, if it's to be, it'll come around. If it's not to be, I'll just live with life as it is and everything. But I was just wondering, how did the whole children's album come about, and how was your how was you pulled into it? Or how were you pulled into it?
Well, out of the 25 artists on the records, I'm probably one of the elders.
Okay.
So that's how I was included on it.
Hmm. Cool.
And during the pandemic, as we were all getting our seasons canceled, because I had a calculated season, like I think I only had to do 12 gigs,
Hmm.
and the pandemic showed up.
Right.
So my whole season got wiped out. And then one venue in Florida, the Kravis Center, kept saying like, "Well, we won't take back the contract yet. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe you'll be able to come down." And the pandemic never went away.
Hmm.
So um, I was glad that I was still trying to work and figure things out. And when I heard about this record being done, I thought, yeah, sure. How are we doing it? Are we all doing it together? They said, no, we're good. Well, if you own your masters and you own a track or you want to write a track, do that.
Hmm.
So quite a few. I think Pierce did a new track for this record, Cootie Shot.
Hmm.
And I used a song that was 20 years old,
Okay.
Set It Free, because it has my husband playing bass and it has D Train on it.
Mm.
And I was like, I got to put a record on with my old ass friends. My kids are like 25 and 23. So they're long gone listening to these records. They're both teachers. So if anything, they could play this in their school.
Hmm.
Wouldn't that be great if they were on the record? They could say, like, kids, here's a record I did with my parents. Who are your parents? How'd you do that? What was that like? Blah, blah, blah. I thought it would be a good idea as a benefit to my kids to pick that, set it free. Because it was a song I wrote for my children. I sang a little bit of the song, but I mostly got them and their friends to sing the song. Talking about, like making your own decision kind of song. Because my kids at that point were becoming tweeners.
Hmm.
They weren't little anymore. Right? Set It Free. Now that's actually my first album. So they were little. I don't know why I wrote that song. I know that it was a conversation that I anticipated having with my kids one day. Because I had conversations with my mom saying, like, no, you can't do that. No, I don't think no, you're not gonna do that. That won't be good for you. And it's like, hey, let me do it. Even if I get it wrong, let me get it wrong. Let me be the one to get it wrong. So I think it was a song to try to say that.
Hmm.
And it wound up being kind of like a spiritual song. Um, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's fascinating. And they were probably sitting there. Did you encourage them to become teachers? Because you mentioned your sister was a teacher. Was the other sibling a teacher, or what field did they go into? And was that something that you encouraged your kids to be, or is it something that you felt that they were drawn into being a teacher?
No, I didn't encourage them to do anything. I encouraged them to use their creative talents because they're multi instrumentalists
Hmm.
and beautiful singers and composers. And they were able to take great classes in elementary and high school and junior high school to prepare their art skills. And I was encouraging them for like music therapy or art therapy and things like that. And I know that our youngest daughter was like, no, I don't want to do anything with the arts. Look how miserable you and dad are.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what I said. We're not miserable. We're happy. They
That's
weren't
not a happy
happy.
face.
They weren't happy. My youngest daughter wasn't happy. You know, she had a mom and dad that was often on tour. My husband on tour a lot.
Hmm.
And me, once I started to figure out how I could get that cash flow flowing, that I could route more gigs. And I was like, well, if I do that gig in Ohio, I just booked 4 gigs in Ohio. I
Hmm.
got to go there and I got to come back. What schools can I see in Pennsylvania on the way there?
Yeah.
And that just kept me gone longer. I didn't need to be gone that long. I was the mom. I could have stayed home. And it's not like I was making millions of dollars. I mean, it's children's music. It doesn't make a lot of money.
Right.
But I reached over 1 million kids going to their schools. Not because I'm on television. I didn't pursue that. I pursued reaching out to kids.
Hmm.
So I got everything that I wanted to achieve. And I was really proud of my daughter to say that she found that we were miserable. And when I asked her why, she says, because you guys are always broke. You're
Hmm.
always saying that you have no money for things. I'm going to get a job. So, you don't have to worry about me. Bali, you might need to worry about her because she doesn't want to even wake up in the morning to go to school. But me, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, Dee Dee. And she literally was out of there.
Mm.
My older brother is not a teacher. He is a chemie with an MBA. So he went into chemicals
Okay.
and selling chemicals and married a wife that worked for Merck Pharmaceuticals. So she
Hmm.
was a chemie with the MBA because she was also selling chemicals and took an early retirement with Vioxx, and they opened up a senior daycare center.
Oh wow. So they put up a
And when my
senior.
brother hired me, he got mad at me because I came in with like children's instruments.
Mm-mm.
He said, these are adults here. I said, yeah, but playtime is playtime. He's like, you don't know what you're doing. And that was the first time he ever said something like that to me. And then I think like I can't repeat what I said because I can't remember it, but I pretty much told him, like, I don't really care. Like, if you don't want me to do what I'm doing, he says, yeah, I don't want you to do what you're doing. As a matter of fact, why don't you subcontract it out to other people that can do what I want them to do?
Hmm.
I don't care. Be the subcontractor. Be the contractor. Hire people. So I was like, oh, thank you for expanding my business.
Yeah.
I'll do that. So that was great advice.
Hmm.
Because I subcontracted a lot of people because I was used to jingle singers and that whole session singer,
Hmm.
contracting singers that way. But then when it was my company that I'm contracting people to do the job that I do,
Hmm.
how do I replace me? I don't. I can't replace me. But I can hire other people that might be better than me.
Wow.
So I did. And they were really happy with everybody that I found. They were so happy. I got a guy who played guitar like a country because they, a lot of white people and stuff. So this guy was like ding ding a ling ding a ling ding, and they were just happy with it. And I was coming in there with djembes and shruti boxes and shakers like this, and everybody, you can keep the beat like this, keep the beat like this, and they were just trying to have fine motor skills.
Hmm.
The elders. So it was a big deal for them to hold a shaker.
Yeah.
Which, if I had become a music therapist, I would have understood that.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of had to learn it on the fly and talk to other music therapists and just be around the scene of music therapy. But yeah, to give somebody this shaker and hand it to them like this means that they need to reach like this.
Right.
Right there is already an activity.
Mm-hmm.
And then they look at you like, I've never seen this thing. What do I do? It's like, shake it. And they say like this. It's like, yeah, you made music. Did you hear it? Great. I'm gonna put on music you like, and then I'd put on like the somebody from the 50s or the 40s, and they'd sit there with the shaker, and they would just have a great time. And my brother was like, hell to the no, I don't think that's gonna be in my place. No, 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 no.
Your brother was like, that's not the answer.
And I was like, you know what, big brother, you gave me an opportunity to keep earning some money.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to bring in not just one, not just two. I'm going to give you 4 people.
4 people.
So they can rotate.
Mm-hmm.
So one week one will come, another week somebody else will come, and then another week, they're not going to be there, so they're going to come twice, 2 weeks in a row, and then your clients can build up a relationship with all of these different musicians.
Right.
One was a percussionist, 2 of them were guitar players. Like a Billboard charting guitar player who needed a job because he didn't have enough gigs. So a 10 a.m., 11 a.m. in the morning job, he was like, really? Sure. How much does it pay? Oh, $25 an hour. How many hours would you need me? At least 2, maybe 2.5. All right, well, that's better than a gig.
Yeah.
If I did a gig at night, I'd probably make that much money. I'd have to take, my car. I'd have to drive. I'd be out late at night. I'd have to do 3 sets, 2 sets. You're saying 2 hours for older people?
Mm-hmm.
And I can play whatever I want? I'm like, absolutely. And they were so happy. They were musicians that were really, really happy. So then I started to learn that I could, subcontract my job out to people.
Wow.
And my brother said, you can actually franchise your job. You can trademark your brand, and then you can franchise it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can create a Robbi doll.
Mm-hmm.
And this, and you can that. And I said, will you please join my board? He was like, hell to the no, I don't have time for that. I got my own businesses and I'm running. And I was like, but you're my big brother, mommy. I had my tears. But the tears didn't work.
Wait a minute, the big brother strategy didn't work? Because that strategy is supposed to work on the big brother. He's supposed to cry and then he's supposed to say yes.
Yeah, didn't work. Then I went to his wife, the other MBA, and I asked her if she would help me, and she did. She went with me to a trade show. Mm. And it's a trade show in New York City called APAP.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, so, and Chuck Davis had an agent, Bess Pruitt.
Mm-hmm.
And she was always at that conference, back before Black people even were at those conferences.
Right.
And she repped Chuck Davis and somebody else.
Mm.
And then when I came along years later, and I met Bess Pruitt, the first time I went to the conference, when I came in, you had to walk past her booth to go on the elevator to the next floor. So she was strategic. as a
Mhm.
businesswoman, because she was like, people are going to want to go upstairs. They're going to have to go upstairs. I want this booth right here. So no matter what, they're going to pass me and I'll
Right.
talk to them. And when she signed me as an artist, she says, Chuck did things for children and young
Mhm.
people,
You definitely
but I
did.
never had anybody that only did things for young people.
Mm.
You're really different from me, but I can help you.
Mm.
You're just going to have to be patient. And I was very impatient because I was young. And Jimmy Owens, the Dizzy Gillespie trumpeter, was the
Mhm.
one that introduced me to Bess. He's like, forget these other agents. You're getting torn up with these agents.
Mhm.
Bess Pruitt. I said, is she your agent? He's like, well, it's not that she's my agent, but she helps me, and she will be able to help you. Whether she signs you or not, I don't know, but she can help you.
Mm.
She's good at helping you. And then the more that I learned about Chuck Davis and just the whole thing, and just more about life, the more I live, the more I realize, like, wow, I have been honored to have an agent that's my elder.
Mhm.
That's like my groundbreaking, landmarking agent.
Mhm.
Other agents can follow her business model. They all should, no matter what color they are, because she had
Yeah.
a really good business model. And yeah, so I don't know. It's just been a wonderful amount of people that I've been able to encounter and talk to
Mhm.
and spend time with, make music with. Um, and I was really happy with All One Tribe because there were so many collaboration,
Yeah.
collaboration. Divinity Rocks is was the bass player that played when Beyonce put together an all-female band,
Mhm.
and now she's done a children's record. I think she's dropping it any minute now. I don't think she's dropped it yet, but like there's all these young talents that are coming up and coming
Mhm.
through that are brilliant.
Yeah.
That I'm looking at myself like, oh my gosh, I used to be, but no, 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 I still am.
Mhm.
It's just got like gray wisdom hairs,
Right.
and that's how I flow. So
Uh,
with the funky eye puppets, I was like, you know what, Juniper, sure, I like making up characters and pretending anyway,
mhm.
and I never had thought of this. IPC is brilliant, and he needs people to support him.
Right.
He needs people to say yes. And he had offered me an opportunity to do some of the like improv room coachings and all that kind of stuff. So I got my fill. I was really happy. I love coaching. That's what I do. I coach people.
Mhm.
And I was glad to do that on Clubhouse.
Right.
And then to meet IPC and learn his story.
Mhm.
I mean, I've watched his not only his Twitch channel, but his
The
Instagram and
YouTube.
YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he's storytelling big time
Mhm.
about what his journey is.
Right.
And that inspires me to complete this book that I'm writing.
Mm.
And then I also realized that I don't actually have to complete it. I can just release a chapter a month.
Right. Yeah, that's really fascinating because I was actually just as you were talking about that conference and everything. I was remember a couple of times that I went to the one that's the college one. I think it's Napa
Uh-huh.
or something like
Yeah.
that. I remember.
Yeah. They do North Sea, out to what, they do
Right.
all the regions too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
APCA?
NAFTA, I think it is something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I went to
APCA.
that. Yeah, I went there a couple of times. I went once in um once it was Louisiana, and the other one might have been I'm trying to remember the other one. It's not coming to me, but I remember the one coming back that was one of those trips. We actually had a reggae group that I was helping get their gigs and everything, and we actually stopped in Ohio, and that's when I think I realized that racism was still going on because
Ooh, yeah.
it was like we stopped. Well, we went to Ohio, and I think we stopped in West Virginia, one of those areas, because the gig was at I think Athens, so it might have been Ohio University. But I
Hmm.
remember us stopping at a um, gas station, and they were having a lottery ticket, and the lottery prize was basically a shotgun. I'm going like, okay, this is not a normal town, so I'm going with the reggae band, and they were fully dreaded out and everything, and myself didn't have the gray hair, but still had curly hair and everything. I'm going like, oh, let's get our whatever we're getting food wise and get the heck out of Dodge. I don't think we're trying to stick around in this particular neighborhood because it did not seem like a welcoming neighborhood in my mind.
Yeah, Ohio, boy, when that Underground Railroad came up north and went, we showed up. We came all the way west.
Yeah.
We showed up and they were unhappy the whole time.
Oh yeah.
People that were there were just unhappy that we showed up.
Hmm.
And we flourished.
Hmm.
Because here I am in Portland, Oregon, and I'm meeting like native Portlandiers.
Right.
And they're like, oh no, my great grandfather was here. My great grandfather raised crops, had sheep.
Hmm.
My great great grandfather was a sheep herder. I
Hmm.
had never met a black person that said my great 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 grandfather was a sheep herder. I was like, what's your name? I want to talk to you. I want to know who you are. And then I'm thinking, like, when I watch you, like, StreamYard is wonderful. These are wonderful platforms that if I wanted to do like a podcast,
Right.
I could do a webcast with
Oh,
StreamYard. I mean, it's pretty easy software.
oh yeah.
It doesn't matter for inability, blindness, anything. If you can push the buttons.
Yeah. It's very easy. It's very easy to do, and it's very um, relaxing. And definitely, you can learn a lot and share stories. That's what I love about it. You get to share stories and meet individuals that are very interested and all of that. I am about to get hungry, so I'm about to wrap everything up and let them know that you probably
Yeah,
got other things to do as well. But one of the
yeah.
things I was going to say that I always do toward the end is let people share how they can be reached and everything, because definitely I know that I'm hoping that you'll come back a couple of more times because loving this conversation. I always love having guests come back when they can, but I could welcome you back 2 or 3 times and all of that. So definitely I'm hoping that you'll get a chance to come back and share more of your insights and story. But if you want to let folks know how they can reach you or contact you, whatever websites you've got and everything. And then one of the things that I have all my guests do toward the end is give their message of positivity and hope for the entire globe, because the International Broadcast Media is an international podcasting network. So we do know like a lot of people are going through a lot of things, and you've been sharing and dropping what my friend Maxine calls pearls of wisdom throughout this conversation. But if there's any message of positivity and hope that you want to give folks, I'd love for you to share that as well.
Well, absolutely. I always have something positive to say. And people can find me on my Linktree link, which is Linktree Robbie Hall, ROBBIHALL. And on that Linktree, you'll be able to see my TED Talk and then all the other things that I like to talk about in terms of healing multiple sclerosis and any illness, diabetes, anything that I've had that's been problematic. I have the links on it in my Linktree account. And my website is my name, RobbiKumalo.com. So I do have a lot of videos there. I do have, I think, 3 or 4 YouTube channels. So if you just Google my name, you got to spell it right. Because if you put an E on it, you're going to find somebody totally different. But it's ROBBIK. What? What did I say? My name is ROBBIK. And if you go there on YouTube or anywhere, you'll probably be able to find it. I play instruments like this. This is called a sansula. And like my monochord that I had played before, these are wonderful instruments that allow you to heal yourself and busy yourself in a positive way. So this is also called an imbira, a kalimba, sansula with this company because they put it on a drum head so you can smack it and just express everything that you're feeling, because sometimes you just got to detox something out.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a sneeze, sometimes it's a tear, sometimes it's a cough. Everybody's wearing a mask and everything is all right, but sometimes it's just sweat.
Mm-hmm.
But our body wants to get rid of things, and if you can't get rid of it, you got to find a way how. And music is usually a wonderful, wonderful healer. Because music, everybody can make, everybody can play the kalimba with their thumbs. And thank you, Mark, so much for letting me be myself on your show.
That's what it's all about. I love people being themselves, definitely sharing themselves and all of that. That's what I thoroughly enjoy folks doing on a regular basis. So definitely, like I said, I hope that you'll come back in and be yourself once again. But yeah, whether it was you or Bessie or other members of the Funky Eye Puppets, I love having y'all
Ooh,
pop in,
yes.
and definitely love having folks just share themselves. So definitely, that's what I find is that spirit of activism, that spirit of education, which is what as
Oh,
the way
yes.
I grew up in and everything. So I just try to carry on that legacy that is part of my legacy and all of that. So I
Oh,
appreciate you for being on.
yes. Yes, absolutely. I'll definitely come back, and especially with the funky eye puppets, because then I can let my hair out and wave my hair back and forth and wave my hair back and forth, but let it out and just be Juniper,
Yeah,
because she's got big hair and she's got big ears, so she doesn't miss a sound.
I'm sure she does it and everything. If you'll just stick around, I'm going to put on the 30-second countdown and the 30-second ending thing, but I'll talk to you a little bit afterwards after I hit that and
Yeah.
everything. But I'm going to hit the
Love you,
30 seconds and then
everybody.
the end broadcast. But stick around and I'll holler at you a little bit just for a minute after the 30-second spot and everything.
Pasa un buen día, gente en el mundo. Have a great day. Love you, friends.